Are you ready to learn the truth about how to survive the harshest blizzard when modern technology is completely powerless? Winter storms on the vast North American plains have always been an incredibly formidable and destructive force of nature. We've grown accustomed to relying on modern heaters, sturdy tents made of synthetic materials, and thermoses filled with hot drinks. But when a true polar storm strikes, all that sophisticated gear can fail at the worst possible moment. In such moments, pure human ingenuity and centuries of experience in surviving the wilderness come to the fore. This story will completely change your understanding of how to act in conditions of extreme winter cold. The icy wind swept everything in its path, and the air temperature plummeted to critical levels in a matter of minutes. In such conditions, a person loses body heat at an alarming rate, and the slightest delay can cost them their life. The plains forgave no mistakes, and the open space turned into an icy trap where it was impossible to hide from the snow blowing in one's face. An ordinary traveler, panicked, would have begun to rush about in search of a cave or a dense forest, wasting their last precious strength. But those who had lived on this land for centuries knew perfectly well that the elements themselves could be made to work for their salvation. All they had to do was stop in time and apply the knowledge accumulated by hundreds of generations of ancestors. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn how the architectural genius of indigenous peoples allowed them to build an impenetrable shelter in just 20 minutes. We'll go into detail about the exact angle at which to set up the support poles so that even a storm wind won't break them. You'll see how to use falling snow itself to further seal and insulate the walls of your temporary shelter. These simple and reliable rules will help you keep your cool and survive any extreme situation in the winter wilderness. Get ready to discover the secrets of ancient engineers who saved lives long before the first weather forecasters and rescue services existed. A secret passed down from generation to generation completely changes the concept of survival in a freezing winter. The indigenous peoples of North America, and especially the Apache, never tried to fight or conquer the wilderness. They studied the direction of strong winds, the density of falling snow, and the features of the complex local terrain with great care. They viewed every natural phenomenon as a useful building tool that needed to be utilized wisely and quickly. A deep understanding of these natural processes helped them construct warm shelters that blended perfectly into the harsh winter landscape. A traditional temporary dwelling had to solve several complex architectural challenges at once. It simply had to withstand the immense weight of a heavy snowpack without the risk of the roof suddenly collapsing. The structure itself required the most streamlined shape possible so that icy currents of dense air would glide smoothly over its surface. The interior living space was designed precisely to retain heat without the need to build a large, fire-hazardous fire. Skilled craftsmen took every minute detail into account, creating a true engineering masterpiece from the simplest natural materials available. Thorough preparations for the long winter began long before the first heavy snowfall blanketed the cold plains. Cautious people scouted out the most suitable, safe locations in deep valleys or dense protective forest thickets well in advance. They diligently gathered sturdy, straight branches and flexible, long twigs, leaving them to dry under spacious, shaded canopies. Dry, clean leaves and stiff pine needles were harvested in truly enormous quantities to create thick insulating layers. This rational approach allowed for emergency construction to begin immediately at the very first signs of an approaching destructive snowstorm. The main fundamental principle of indigenous architecture was maximum thermal efficiency with minimal expenditure of human energy. They never cut down thick trunks of living trees or dug deep, long trenches in the frozen, hard ground. Instead, they actively utilized trees felled by strong winds, natural rock depressions, and preformed snowdrifts. The surrounding nature itself provided half of the finished, sturdy dwelling. All that remained was to correctly and skillfully supplement this foundation. This clever method conserved precious physical energy, which was vital for maintaining normal internal body heat in freezing conditions. The shape of the classic quick snow shelter strongly resembled an inverted deep bowl or a neat, smooth natural hill. This wooden dome possessed remarkable natural aerodynamics, deflecting even the most powerful, destructive gusts of strong wind to the sides. Heavy snow did not accumulate on top of the structure, but slid very smoothly down to the wide base, further reinforcing the walls. Inside such a protective dome, a special, comfortable microclimate with a constant, stable, positive air temperature quickly formed. The finished structure stood absolutely still, even during the most unpredictable and severe February snowstorms. Complex architectural skills were passed down to younger generations through constant, arduous practice in real, harsh field conditions. Training took place directly during the process of collaborative, responsible work on creating genuine, warm winter hunting shelters. Experienced mentors showed the young men the correct angles for the branches and reliable methods for weaving a sturdy wooden frame. Mistakes in such a critical construction project could be too costly, so the final quality was strictly monitored. This long-standing practical experience gradually crystallized into a perfect, foolproof formula for survival in the dangerous, snow-covered plains. Every winter shelter built served as undeniable proof of these strong people's deep connection to the surrounding wild world. They skillfully transformed the hostile, icy environment into their most reliable, warm, and faithful natural ally. This ancient approach differed radically from the attempts of modern engineers to rigidly isolate themselves from nature using complex metal technologies. I'd be very interested to hear your perspective on this unusual and eco-friendly philosophy of extreme winter survival. What are your honest thoughts on these methods? Share them in the comments and be sure to subscribe to our channel. What if everything you were taught about reliable winter shelters is hopelessly and permanently outdated? Modern travel guides often advise setting up camp on an open, high elevation for a good view of the terrain. Native Americans did exactly the opposite, preferring hidden lowlands and complex, deep folds in the terrain. They deliberately sought out natural barriers capable of breaking up the powerful flow of cold air before it reached their dwellings. Choosing the right location from the start saved them long hours of hard physical labor building artificial windbreaks. A dense, dark, coniferous forest was always considered one of the best and safest places for an emergency winter camp. Tall old trees with dense, broad canopies intercepted most of the falling snow and effectively dampened the force of the blizzard. Spacious, dry areas without deep snow drifts often formed beneath the lowest, spreading branches of large old fir trees. These natural niches served as an excellent, ready-made, reliable foundation for erecting a future, warm, dome-shaped shelter. All the builders had to do was slightly reinforce the walls and create a thick insulating layer on the frozen ground below. In the complete absence of a forest, experienced builders studied snowdrifts in the undulating terrain with great care. They sought out steep, precipitous banks of frozen rivers or deep, wide ravines sheltered from the constantly blowing prevailing winds. They determined the exact direction of the wind by the shape of the frozen, solid snow ridges and the slope of the frozen, dry, tall grass. The entrance to the future shelter was always positioned strictly and only on the safe leeward side of the slope they had found. This guaranteed 100% that a powerful blizzard would not sweep away the entrance or penetrate the warm interior. The ground beneath the future temporary dwelling was also of immense importance for preserving the internal warmth of the sleeping people. Native American builders tried to choose level areas with dry, sandy, or stony soil, avoiding frozen, damp swamps. Damp, wet earth drew precious heat away from the shelter much faster than a dry, more porous, solid surface. In cases of urgent need, the site was additionally lined with a thick layer of stripped bark, separating the living space from the icy permafrost. This artificial natural foundation became the very first line of defense against the piercing, treacherous cold rising from the ground. For rapid emergency construction, large uprooted trees, the massive roots of fallen large forest trees, were often and very successfully used. This enormous, uneven vertical wall of interwoven earth and solid wood served as an excellent ready-made back wall for the shelter. It completely and reliably blocked the icy wind from one side and excellently reflected heat into the enclosed space. All that remained was to finish the front of the structure by forming a sloping, sturdy roof from gathered poles and snow. Such natural forest anomalies were always perceived as a very valuable and useful gift from nature to incredibly exhausted and frozen travelers. A thorough analysis of the terrain took only a few short minutes, but it completely determined the success of the entire arduous undertaking that followed. An experienced, keen eye instantly scanned the entire landscape, accurately noting all the advantages and hidden flaws of every square meter. It was very much like reading an incredibly complex map, where broken thin branches and snowdrifts served as markers. The decision was made very quickly, after which the active and extremely coordinated phase of actually erecting the wooden structure began immediately. The final temperature inside the future, safe and life-saving winter shelter depended on the correctness of this single decision. In some particularly challenging cases, builders had to laboriously reshape the terrain to create an optimal, level site. They worked diligently to pile the snow into tall, dense mounds, forming a sturdy additional windbreak around the chosen safe spot. Choosing a location was not merely a tedious technical step, but a true art of deep interaction with the surrounding nature. The right location permanently transformed a hostile environment into an incredibly reliable ally and protector against the deadly cold. The craftsmen were masters at finding the perfect balance between absolute concealment, safety, and the availability of natural forest building materials. This sturdy foundation guaranteed the resounding success of all subsequent stages in the creation of the life-saving winter wooden dome. In the next chapter, you will learn how these skilled craftsmen created the most complex architectural framework without using a single metal nail. What lies behind the pretty advertising images of modern tourist tents pales in comparison to the ingenuity of indigenous peoples. The sturdy foundation of their winter shelter was a highly complex dome frame, carefully assembled from dozens of flexible, resilient rods. This wooden structure had no sharp right angles or flat surfaces that could trap the icy wind. A perfectly smooth hemisphere provided the maximum necessary interior volume, with a minimum area of all exterior walls exposed to the wind. Such a geometric shape is still rightly considered the most durable and complex modern architectural design. Rapid construction began with the installation of the main massive supporting arches, which determined the overall height and width of the future dwelling. Thick yet incredibly flexible willow or hazel branches were driven very deep into the compact snow or ground along the perimeter. Then their slender tips were carefully bent toward the very center and firmly bound together with flexible forest roots. The result was a very resilient, reliable foundation, resembling an inverted woven basket, capable of flexing under strong gusts of hurricane-force wind. The frame did not resist the elements rigidly at all, but very smoothly absorbed their powerful energy with its elasticity. Particular attention was always paid to the doorway, which was formed at the very earliest stage of assembling the wooden frame. The entrance was made as small as possible, forcing an adult to crawl inside on bent knees. The very low arch of the doorway physically prevented warm, light air from escaping quickly when the entrance doors were opened. The wooden door frame was further reinforced with very thick branches, as it bore the heaviest load. The precise, calibrated geometry of the entrance was the most important engineering secret for retaining precious heat in a harsh winter dwelling. In some regions, very long, straight poles were actively used to construct the frame, forming a tall conical shape. This variant was more commonly used in areas with extremely frequent and heavy snowfalls, but without constant strong winds. The steep vertical slope of the cone's walls caused heavy, sticky masses of snow to slide down to the ground almost instantly. The poles were very firmly fastened at the very top, forming a sturdy lock capable of supporting the weight of several adults. Such unusual architecture required slightly different forest materials, but obeyed the same strict laws of physics and geometry. Creating the correct geometric frame took no more than 10 minutes of coordinated, active work by 2 or 3 trained people. They acted almost intuitively, subtly sensing the tension in the wood and visually assessing the accuracy of the resulting spheres. Their toolkit contained absolutely no paper drawings or complex measuring instruments, only a keen eye and a very steady hand. The end result was always a perfect, beautiful mathematical figure, embodied in a complex interweaving of ordinary forest branches. This incredible natural architecture boldly defied the harshest weather conditions of the rugged North American continent. The geometry of this remarkable shelter was a true triumph of human ingenuity over the blind, crushing force of a winter storm. Every single branch in this highly complex woven pattern performed its own strictly defined, vital physical function. They weren't just building a temporary shelter, they were consciously creating an incredibly reliable shell for survival in an extremely cold environment. This ancient, time-tested engineering approach undoubtedly deserves the most sincere, deep admiration and immense respect. Please like this video if you too are deeply impressed by the architectural genius of these brave ancient peoples. Guess how long it took to create this absolutely impenetrable barrier against the biting icy wind? As soon as the wooden frame acquired the necessary springy stiffness, the most important stage of insulating the thin walls began immediately. The bare, drafty wooden skeleton couldn't retain heat. It had to be urgently transformed into a dense, reliable thermos. To achieve this, the principle of layering was actively employed, a method still widely used today in the production of high-end winter clothing. Air, securely trapped between numerous dense layers of natural materials, became the best natural insulator. The very first step was to lay a very thick layer of dry fallen leaves or soft grass over the woven wooden lattice. This loose material was gathered in sheltered depressions under the snow or drawn from large reserves prepared in advance during the fall. The dry leaves were very carefully strung onto protruding wooden twigs, creating a continuous, even carpet without a single gap. The total thickness of this first, most important layer could easily reach several dozen centimeters to ensure the most reliable protection. It was this soft, loose barrier that was entirely responsible for trapping warm, human-generated air inside the enclosed living space. A dense, thick layer of green spruce or long pine branches was always laid on top of the loose-leaf carpet. Fresh coniferous branches were arranged using a clever overlapping method, directing all the needles strictly downward toward the base of the constructed dome. The final quality of all insulation materials depended directly on their absolute and impeccable natural dryness. Damp old leaves or wet spring grass would freeze almost instantly, turning into a solid block of cold ice. Therefore, gathering absolutely dry materials in winter required special skill and the ability to search beneath the roots of old massive trees. Very often, soft material from old destroyed squirrel nests or empty mouse burrows was used for high-quality insulation. Absolutely anything that could in any way retain the precious, life-saving warm air within a closed space was put to use. The total thickness of the walls in their finished state could easily exceed half a meter, turning the shelter into a veritable warm fortress. This plump, soft layer made the wooden structure appear very voluminous and allowed it to blend completely with the white snowdrifts. The multi-layered nature of the walls made it very easy to repair the dwelling during a storm, simply by adding fresh green branches on top of the old layers. The complex, multi-layered structure of the wooden walls was a true masterpiece of adaptive, ingenious engineering by the indigenous peoples of the Americas. It clearly demonstrated a profound practical understanding of the laws of thermodynamics and the unique properties of the surrounding natural materials. Absolutely every element of this complex mosaic worked exclusively to preserve fragile human warmth in the icy, lifeless desert. This architectural approach provided incredibly reliable protection even during the harshest and most unpredictable cold winters. In the next chapter, you will learn how these craftsmen managed to seal the finished shelter. The final and most crucial stage of constructing a winter shelter was always the use of snow itself as an outer layer of icy armor. Clever builders did not attempt to clear the roof of snow, but instead purposefully and densely covered the structure with a thick white layer. Fluffy snow is simply an excellent natural insulator thanks to the millions of microscopic air bubbles trapped between ice crystals. The thicker and more massive the snow cover on the roof, the much more comfortable the temperature inside the dwelling became. Gradually, the wooden hut would disappear completely under a beautiful white snowdrift, blending perfectly with the surrounding flat winter landscape. For careful covering, they always used the fluffiest, freshly fallen snow, which they gently scattered over the spruce branches and dry leaves. They never packed it down too tightly so as not to accidentally squeeze the precious insulating warm air out of the fragile structure. The entire mass of snow was meant to settle completely naturally and bind firmly under its own heavy weight. This fluffy white blanket very reliably sealed even the tiniest microscopic cracks through which a cold draft might seep. The fragile wooden structure quickly transformed into a completely airtight capsule, 100% protected from any sudden external temperature fluctuations. The final thickness of the snow shell could be easily and quickly adjusted depending on changes in harsh weather conditions. During extreme nighttime frosts, the builders would go outside and actively pile additional portions of fluffy snow onto the roof. The fluffy snow also served a very important visual camouflage function in the event of potential conflicts on the open plains. The snow-covered low dome was completely invisible to the untrained eye, even from a distance of just a few dozen meters. The light smoke from a small fire dispersed very easily through the branches, giving absolutely no indication of the hidden camp's exact location. This allowed lone travelers to feel completely safe during very long, cold winter stops. Perfect visual blending with the winter landscape was one of the main strict principles of safe travel through wild terrain. Using snow as a full-fledged building material required a very precise understanding of its complex physical properties. Completely different types of ice crystals trapped air in different ways and bonded together in strong, cold winds. A deep understanding of these crucial nuances was passed down as the most vital knowledge for survival in the harsh northern climates. The cold white blanket ceased to be a fearsome enemy forever and became a warm, life-saving blanket for entire families. This is the most striking historical example of how deep practical knowledge transforms mortal danger into reliable, cozy protection. Are you ready for the shocking truth about how snow went from being an enemy to a vital, life-saving ally? Inside the completely airtight, insulated dome, a new, deadly, invisible danger quickly emerged: poisonous carbon monoxide and a lack of oxygen. Proper, constant ventilation was always a matter of life and certain death for all the weary people sheltering inside. Experienced craftsmen always left a small opening at the very top of the wooden dome to allow smoke to escape freely. This tiny exhaust vent was designed precisely so that the wind would not blow acrid sparks back into the living quarters. The size of this vent was very strictly controlled and could change constantly depending on the current weather. In very severe frost, it was tightly covered with a bundle of dry grass to trap as much heated air as possible inside the dome. While cooking or maintaining a bright, strong fire, the vent was opened as wide as possible to create the best draft. Controlling this clever natural valve required constant close attention and a very subtle understanding of the laws of air circulation. An opening that was too large led to rapid cooling, while one that was too small posed a huge risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. A small, life-saving hearth was located strictly in the very center of the shelter, in a small depression dug directly into the hard ground. For constant heating, they used not large, thick logs, but exclusively dry, thin branches that produced very little acrid smoke. Such a low fire burned very evenly and hotly, producing absolutely no dangerous flying sparks capable of igniting dry foliage. The heat from the central, bright fire spread very evenly in all directions, effectively warming the inner sloping walls of the dome. The ground around the hot hearth also heated up significantly, turning into a kind of heavy natural accumulator of valuable thermal energy. Large, flat, heavy stones placed vertically were very often used to direct the heat from the fire. They acted as ideal heat shields, directing all infrared radiation precisely toward the resting, sleeping people. The heavy stones, which had been heated intensely during the evening, continued to give off heat for a long time, even after the fire had completely died down. This allowed people to sleep soundly throughout the long night without having to constantly wake up and add new dry firewood. The use of heavy, heat-retaining natural materials significantly increased the overall efficiency of the entire dwelling heating system. In some extreme cases, heating was provided exclusively by the natural body heat of the people themselves. In very small, cramped shelters built for only 1 or 2 people, fires were not lit at all for safety reasons. Maximally effective wall insulation allowed the enclosed space to be quickly heated to above freezing temperatures by human breath alone. This complex, extreme method was used during secret, covert movements or when there was a complete, absolute lack of dry firewood. It always required a perfect, meticulous fit of all the insulating layers of vegetation and the complete absence of even the slightest gaps in the structure. Managing this complex microclimate transformed an ordinary pile of branches and snow into an incredibly comfortable dwelling in the midst of a howling storm. These vital skills allowed people to travel and hunt freely, even during the harshest, darkest months of the long winter. The wilderness was conquered not by the brute force of machines, but by the profound wisdom and keen observation of the inquisitive human mind. This rich experience undeniably proves that proper, intelligent design is far more important than a powerful source of artificial heat. In the next chapter, you will learn how daily life was organized in these cramped conditions. The usable space inside the dome snow shelter was extremely limited, which required a perfectly strict organization of daily life. Absolutely every square centimeter of the earthen floor had its own strictly defined purpose and immense functional value. Warm sleeping areas were traditionally located along the rear and sloping side walls, as far as possible from the drafty, cold entrance. The area around the small central earthen hearth was always kept completely clear for movement and for preparing very meager hot meals. Unquestioning adherence to this strict order guaranteed 100% comfort and absolute safety within the cramped confines of the winter shelter. A warm bed was always formed from a very thick layer of dry materials, lifting the sleeper high above the cold, frozen ground. At the very bottom were laid very stiff and resilient long pine branches, creating an air layer and an excellent springy effect. On top of these, the softest dry grass, forest moss, or large, broad leaves gathered in advance during the fall were carefully spread. The thicker and more luxuriant such a forest bed was, the better it protected a person from the treacherous, icy cold coming up from below. Very often, the edges of the bed were additionally fenced off with thick, heavy logs to prevent the loose insulating material from spreading across the floor. Cooking hot food in such a cramped shelter always required extreme caution and the use of smokeless methods. Only pre-dried pieces of old food were used, which did not require very long cooking or intense frying. To heat snowmelt, a very small pot was suspended over the hot hearth, or stones heated in a bright fire were used. They were lowered very carefully and slowly into a container of water, using long wooden tongs until the water came to a full, vigorous boil. This ancient method completely eliminated the formation of very thick, acrid smoke and kept the indoor air suitable for normal breathing. Constant lighting during the dark of night was provided exclusively by the smoldering red coals of a small central earthen hearth. For a brighter, focused light, only very thin splinters of resinous wood from dry coniferous trees were used. They burned with a very bright, steady yellow flame, perfectly illuminating the vaulted wooden ceiling with a soft, golden, incredibly warm light. The use of such natural open candles was always strictly controlled to prevent even the slightest accidental ignition of the dry walls. The dim light inside the shelter quickly created an incredible sense of homey comfort amidst the howling, icy wild elements raging outside the walls. To provide reliable protection against any small forest debris falling from the ceiling, a light-tensioned interior canopy was very often constructed. It was skillfully woven from long, thin grass stalks and tightly stretched directly above the sleeping areas of everyone inside. This lightweight screen effectively collected all the falling dry pine needles and occasional cold drops of condensation, reliably protecting the faces of those resting. Every morning, the canopy was very carefully removed and gently shaken out onto the street, constantly maintaining perfect cleanliness in the living quarters. Such a very simple detail significantly increased the overall level of comfort and hygiene in the harsh field conditions of the long winter. The skillful organization of daily life in such extreme, harsh conditions undeniably demonstrates humanity's capacity for profound natural adaptation. Even in the coldest environment, it is entirely possible to create a tiny corner of warmth, strict order, and relative human comfort. This requires absolutely no complex machinery or very expensive artificial materials from distant industrial factories. All that is needed is resourcefulness, immense patience, and a deeply respectful attitude toward the laws of the harsh natural environment. These ancient Native American skills remain forever an unparalleled example of ideal functional minimalism in the field conditions of survival. The arrival of a very powerful winter cyclone on the open plains proved to be a truly terrifying ordeal for the lightweight dome shelter. The speed of the icy wind in such terrible moments could easily knock one off one's feet, and visibility instantly dropped to absolute zero. Safe inside, people heard only the deafening low rumble of the elements raging just a few centimeters from their faces. However, the well-designed and sturdy wooden structure stood unshakable, smoothly slicing through the streams of furious cold air. Its perfectly spherical shape gave the hurricane absolutely no foothold, transforming its immense destructive force into a gentle glide across the surface. During the peak of the strongest gusts of icy wind, the wooden wicker frame might emit a quiet creaking under the immense load. These eerie sounds did not cause any panic at all, as the flexibility of the living branches had been built into the structure from the very beginning. The absolute calm of the hut's inhabitants during the terrible storm rested entirely on their confidence in its sturdy construction. They knew for certain that every single knot was tied correctly, and that every curved branch lay precisely in its proper place. This firm confidence was not foolish, blind overconfidence. It was based entirely on the millennia of practical experience of their ancestors. The technology of winter survival had been passed down without the slightest distortion, guaranteeing reliable protection to anyone who followed the ancient, strict rules. Any fear instantly receded in the face of a deep understanding of the laws of physics and the absolute reliability of this natural architectural masterpiece. After the final end of a terrible storm that had lasted for days, exiting the shelter often turned into a full-scale snow excavation. The snow very often became so dense and hard that it had to be laboriously cut into blocks with sharp wooden tools. Once they finally made it outside, people squinted hard against the bright spring sun, which reflected blindingly off the endless white expanse of the plain. Their cozy temporary home had turned into a completely unremarkable low snowdrift, completely blending into the surrounding white landscape. This was the most triumphant, indisputable proof that fragile human beings are capable of successfully withstanding the harshest challenges of nature. The experience of struggling to survive in a blizzard forged the Native Americans' character with incredible strength and shaped their unique philosophical worldview. They diligently learned not to panic at all in extreme situations, but to carry out all necessary survival actions in a very methodical manner. The wilderness did not act as an evil enemy at all, but solely as a very strict and uncompromising teacher. Those who survived this terrifying ordeal gained incredible inner strength and absolute confidence in their acquired skills. This valuable knowledge remains a priceless and rich legacy in the long history of humanity's interaction with the planet's harsh, cold climate. A long stay in a cramped, dark space under a howling, icy blizzard has always been a severe test for the human psyche. Complete isolation from the white world outside and the incredible monotony of the days demanded simply enormous inner discipline from absolutely every member of the group. Native Americans have always possessed a unique philosophical mindset that helped them endure such prolonged confinement with ease and calm. They viewed the forced halt in their journey not as a waste of time, but as a very important period of long-awaited physical rest. The ability to relax in conditions of constant mortal danger has always been the most crucial, unseen skill of extreme winter survival. The ringing silence inside the snow dome, interrupted only by the quiet crackling of coals, plunged everyone into a deep, meditative state. On such incredibly long evenings, the oldest members of the group passed down oral traditions and ancient legends to the attentive younger members. These long stories were not merely entertainment, they reliably encoded within them the most essential rules for safe behavior in winter. Stories about the spirits of the wind and snow served as excellent metaphors for real physical phenomena and hidden natural icy dangers. Listening intently to these rhythmic tales, people forgot the biting cold and clearly felt the invisible, strong bond between generations. A positive attitude and a great sense of humor were always considered the most important tools of psychological defense under conditions of extreme stress. The ability to laugh sincerely at difficulties instantly relieved internal tension and prevented any possible conflicts within the cramped shelter. Gloomy thoughts and deep despondency were always strictly condemned, as they quickly robbed a person of the will to continue fighting. The energy of the entire group was always directed exclusively toward maintaining high spirits and strong mutual moral support. This remarkable emotional cohesion worked far more effectively than even the warmest, multi-layered insulation materials of sturdy walls. When the storm lasted too long, food supplies could dwindle critically, causing perfectly natural inner anxiety. In such situations, a mechanism of strict economy and patient endurance of the agonizing pangs of hunger immediately kicked in. The remarkable physiology of these hardy people allowed them to easily get by on a minimal number of calories without losing their absolute clarity of mind. Hunger was perceived only as a temporary, annoying inconvenience, and absolutely not as a reason for despair or rash, dangerous actions. Strict control over basic animal instincts demonstrated the highest level of spiritual culture among the indigenous peoples of the cold plains. These rituals provided immense hope and firm confidence that the white element would inevitably calm down sooner or later. A strong belief in supreme justice greatly helped them accept absolutely any hardship with remarkable dignity and calm. The bright inner light of these ancient spiritual traditions provided warmth no less than the smoldering red embers in an earthen hearth. The psychology of extreme survival in such conditions was based on a complete, conscious rejection of futile struggle against inevitable circumstances. Experienced people blended seamlessly into the unhurried rhythm of winter nature, becoming an integral and very organic part of it. This unique philosophical approach is radically different from the modern habit of aggressively subjugating the environment to one's personal needs. The unique experience of indigenous peoples reminds us of the incredible importance of patience and deep respect for the mighty forces of nature. In these snow-covered refuges, the truly unyielding, iron will of the brave conquerors of the boundless cold expanses of North America was forged. When the harsh, long winter finally retreated reluctantly and the warm sun began to thaw the frozen ground, it was time to leave. The philosophy of the Native Americans strictly required leaving the campsite in such a state as if people had never been there at all. This unbreakable rule was dictated not only by considerations of secrecy, but also by the deepest, most sincere respect for the spirits of the wild forest. The shelter, which had served faithfully and reliably through the long, frosty months, was not torn down roughly, but very carefully and meticulously taken apart. Absolutely every element of the wooden structure was returned to the natural cycle with a sense of sincere, silent, and profound gratitude. First and foremost, the remnants of the partially melted spring snow and the thick top layer of bark were removed from the roof with incredible care. These natural materials were scattered widely around the area so that they would melt or rot much faster under the rays of the spring sun. A thick, insulating layer of dry old grass and leaves was removed and spread very evenly in a uniform layer among the trees. The forest ecosystem very quickly absorbed these dry organic remains, instantly transforming them into nutritious humus for the growth of new plants. Within just a few short weeks, the site of the former camp was overgrown with an abundance of fresh, bright green spring grass. The frame itself, made of flexible branches, was dismantled just as meticulously, starting with the thinnest upper crossbars. The sturdy natural roots were untied, and the massive supporting arches were very slowly pulled out of the thawed, damp, dark earth. If the thin branches still retained their natural flexibility, they could easily be taken along to create lightweight portable shelters. Otherwise, the wood was very carefully stacked in low-lying areas, where it would quickly decay under the active influence of moisture. The skeleton of the former dwelling vanished without a trace, leaving absolutely no ugly stakes sticking out that might spoil the pristine, ideal appearance of the forest clearing. This long process of a silent, traceless departure sometimes took much longer than the initial emergency construction of the shelter itself. People spared no physical effort to fully restore the natural balance, considering it their sacred, inalienable duty. Such behavior was radically and completely different from the habits of the colonizers, who always left behind huge mountains of trash and destroyed forests. The indigenous people's ecological consciousness was shaped not by scientific treatises, but solely by 1,000 years of careful survival practices. They knew full well that the barbaric destruction of the wilderness would inevitably and very quickly lead to the destruction of their own ancient lineage. In cases where a group firmly planned to return to the same favorable spot the following winter, they might leave the sturdy frame behind. However, they always completely removed the insulating layer of leaves from it so that the wood would not rot at all under the melting snow. The bare, sturdy skeleton of thick poles easily withstood spring winds and heavy summer downpours without damage. In winter, all that remained was to cover it anew with fresh green branches and quickly pile on a thick layer of fluffy white snow. This smart approach saved a tremendous amount of energy during the hunters' regular, long seasonal migrations across the familiar plains. We have studied in detail and with great depth the indigenous people's remarkable architectural approach to survival in the harsh conditions of winter blizzards. This absolutely ingenious symbiosis of readily available natural materials and the strict laws of physics undeniably proves that human ingenuity knows absolutely no bounds. Such unusual construction methods remain an unrivaled, vivid example of humanity's profound adaptation to extreme environmental conditions without the use of complex technologies. Suggest topics in the comments for future videos that you'd definitely like to see on our channel. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss new exciting episodes about survival in the harsh wilderness.